Live.
Okay, let me just make sure that this is going on this side. Perfect.
Yeah?
And yeah, we're good to go.
Sweet. Okay, guys, hello, happy Monday, and welcome to episode 19 of Change School TV, How to Stay Sane in a Toxic Work Environment. For those of you who are new to us, I'm Sol, and there's Grace.
Bye.
And me personally, so one, I just need to say I'm sorry I sound a bit stuffy and probably look a bit like death right now because I am recovering from the flu. But on a positive note, I am so excited to be back in warm Singapore after 3 weeks in Taiwan, which I love, but it has been winter and this little tropical girl is not used to 8-degree weather. And so if you tuned in last week or even the week before, you probably saw me like bundled up in like 15 layers and with, somewhat choppy Wi-Fi connection. So apologies for that. But I am back in my zone, in my home, on fast Wi-Fi and warm weather. So I'm so happy to be here. Grace, how are we doing on everything?
Okay, good. I'm just sharing and I'm just getting things on my phone here.
Okay.
So just bear with me for
All
one second.
No worries. So for those of you who are just tuning in as well, just a big warm welcome. Happy Monday. And just to quickly recap that today is episode 19, How to Stay Sane in a Toxic Work Environment. So we're going to be sharing a little bit about what a toxic environment is, and Grace is going to take you through the outline. I won't steal her limelight, but whenever you're ready.
Awesome. So yeah, for those of you that are watching us live, if you want to, as I always say, give us some love, whether it's thumbs up or some of the love hearts, and let us know where you're tuning in from, because we've got people usually tuning in from all parts of the world. So it's always cool to see where you guys are coming in from. Okay, so today's episode, like Sol said, is episode 19, How to Stay Sane in a Toxic Work Environment. So this is a really big topic for a lot of people who are unhappy in their job or in their current role. And it's something that we hear, here and there during the work, with the work that we do. So it's also a great extension to last week's episode 18. If you guys haven't tuned in, we'll share that link a little bit later. But last week's episode was on understanding the difference between a job and a career, in order to focus on thriving versus just surviving. So if you missed that, you can head on to bit.ly/Change School TV 18. I'll pop that in the comments in a minute when Sol starts chit-chatting, and you can catch up on that and then, look at some of our other episodes that we've had. We've had 19 episodes. It's crazy. So what we're going to cover today is we're going to cover the signs of a toxic work environment, how to stay sane, obviously, how to be proactive or get proactive and be part of the solution. And Sol's going to kick us off with the 3 signs of a toxic workplace or work environment.
Sweet. Thanks, Grace. So, okay, 3 main areas I want to talk a little bit about can kind of give you an idea of the toxicity of your workplace. So number 1 is really to do with the health of the system at your workplace. So the 3 pillars are kind of communication, policies, and procedures. So one of the most common symptoms and signs of a toxic workplace that we've seen is a lack of super clear policies and procedures. And what happens with this is that it creates a culture of just winging it. And sometimes that's necessary. You have to be able to go with the flow, stay on your toes, be in a fast-paced environment, and adapt to change. But when that becomes a way of working, the problem is you get inconsistencies in the quality of work that everybody's producing and the way that people are working with each other. So the other common scenario we see is a problem of a lack of communication. So even if you have great policies and clear procedures, if you're in a toxic environment, a lot of times they're not being communicated and therefore they're not being implemented effectively. And more importantly, they're not being reviewed. And who reviews and who puts in inputs, that's another can of worms. But without those three things kind of happening, the result is you kind of get an unhealthy or failed system, and then everybody loses. So for companies to really have effective systems that work, you need a solid foundation that's kind of built from the top initially. It's got to be communicated down through managers effectively, and then it has to be implemented and sort of throughout everything that the company does. Then on the flip side, sometimes there's also too much structure where people get so overwhelmed and so confused or exacerbated by like which policy, which reporting line, and what have you, that, you know, all this great stuff exists in documents, but then nobody's actually doing it, and so you don't get the outcomes you want. So it is about finding that balance. So symptom number one is to think about the health of the system of your company. Number two is to look at leadership. And, you know, as we all know, leadership is about leading people. So I love acronyms and letters and things like this. And so I look at the word leaders and just draw a couple words from there that can help you do like a leadership health check in your own time. Don't feel obliged to share it with your whole company. But just if you want to think about these things. So L for listening, right? So being a really good leader is about being a really good listener. And that's not just listening to people who are in your boardroom, but also your managers, also people on the ground who are doing stuff, and taking those concerns seriously. It doesn't mean they're going to always listen, or so, okay, they should listen. They might not always follow through with what you're saying, but your inputs should be valued and taken on board, or at least have a space to be heard. E for enablement. So good leaders look to enable their employees by lifting them up, giving them feedback, and recognizing their efforts and when they're doing good work. A for accessibility. Inspiring leaders, you know, they really don't just sit in the corner office. They also open themselves up to the rest of the team and make themselves accessible, whether it's, you know, at team gatherings or events, or maybe having like open office hours at certain times, or open door policies. You know, it really should be a channel for communication so that, you know, again, voices are heard. D for directives. So leaders need to give really good guidance and clear goals to their employees, because they are the sort of bastions of the company's vision, mission, values, and how that's demonstrated in the way the company thinks, collectively, how decisions are made, and how work is prioritized. E for empowerment. So, you know, the best leaders understand that developing high-achieving teams is about empowering employees. So the aim isn't to just always be dictating, but to really advancing people so that they can become the future leaders of the organization or teams or divisions. And last two, R for responsiveness. So great leaders should be, as I said, not just listening, but responsive to your inputs. They should be expressing appreciation, rewarding performance, and giving constructive feedback if you're making mistakes or you can be doing things better. So responsiveness really has a big role to play in the health of an organization, because you're engaging and retaining the best people. And last but not least is support. We all need to feel supported, and that we have someone to go to either express our concerns, to work out a growth plan, and to really kind of be able to voice things if we feel that the company values, basic values like fairness, you know, empathy, inclusion, aren't being practiced. So, you know, competence and accountability should be rewarded. And, you know, we also need channels to improve and advance ourselves. So that's all about leadership. The third final piece to gauge the toxicity of your workplace is around your team or your coworkers. So one of the most common traits we see of dysfunctional teams are things like unhealthy competition. You know, it's great to have a little competition in you, right? To want to be, to always want to strive to do your best. But when it gets unhealthy, where people are not supporting one another, or, you know, worse, like throwing each other under the bus, that is unhealthy competition. Social cliquiness is also something we see a lot, sometimes, especially in large corporations. And that's really just exclusion with a nice little term. So, you know, exclusive cultures are obviously not something that are healthy for individuals or groups. And that kind of toxicity just kind of expands throughout the company and leads to a lack of collaboration and cooperation. And at the end of the day, that's what teams are for, whether it's within teams or across divisions. So what happens is that it leads to conflicts, and then that has a negative impact on individual well-beings, on team cultures, and then how the company performs as a whole. So just some common behaviors you might see in toxic teams are things like gossip, you know, spreading rumors that end up, you know, spreading fear, spreading uncertainty, and then it's just sort of a vicious cycle. Sometimes ganging up on people or coercing other people to make certain decisions or to agree to a certain agenda. It's kind of like high school, guys, in a corporate setting. Believe it or not, it happens, and, you know, we don't always notice it or realize it, but if you are faced with it, stay out of it. Don't perpetuate. Another one is playing the blame game. I mean, I think this can happen consciously and subconsciously, right? We tend to sometimes not take responsibility for mistakes, or, you know, blame others for challenges and problems that we're seeing, rather than looking inward and going, okay, what could I maybe do differently to make a situation different? And last but not least, grabbing all the glory. So I think I've personally seen this before in my own sort of company scenarios in the past. And, you know, I think what I want to highlight here is that working as a team is also about sharing, you know, the collective efforts of something. No one single-handedly achieves any results when you're working in an organization. So those are my 3 bits. What did I even say? The system, right? Leaders and the team. Sorry, guys, my head's a bit hazy, but I'm going to shut up now. Grace is going to share 10 sanity tips.
Yeah, awesome. So I'm going to try, and I mean, we'll have all of this in our blog recap, which we'll share with you later as well. But, you know, we deep dive in our blog recap a little bit more as well on some of the points. But just quickly, because I've got you guys on my phone here, those of you that are watching us live, if you're tuning in and out, that's cool. We know it's Monday night. You know, you're probably just getting home or having dinner. But if you know someone that would benefit from this, or that, you know, could add value to their lives from watching this episode of our Change School TV, then we'd love for you guys to just share it. And, you know, we're going to share our 10 sanity tips in a minute, but it's always great to, you know, help spread the word a little bit more and help those that are in a toxic work environment, and give them a little bit of a Monday booster. And those of you watching live, just tune in and let us know where you're signing in from so we can see where you guys are watching us from. Okay, so the 10 sanity tips. The first one is leave work at work. So oftentimes, you know, when we're in a toxic work environment, it's so easy to come home and want to like get it out and bring it into the home. And it's really good to try and keep that energy outside. So don't bring the poison home with you, right? If you know that your work environment is toxic, is just try and not look at your phone, try and not, you know, respond to emails, really try and protect that home environment and that negative energy so that when you leave the workspace, you know, as soon as you get onto the MRT or the bus or whatever it is that you're going on, right, maybe plug in some tunes or listen to an upbeat podcast or listen to the Change School TV, right, things like that, so that you can start getting yourself into a better mood when you reach the home, especially if you've got a partner, or especially if you've got kids, right? The worst thing you want to do is like have had a shitty day, been frustrated with all the people around you, and you're like typing away, miserable, right? Is like just try and reset, reframe, and get into a good mindset so that you can stay sane, right? Once that starts infiltrating in your home environment, it impacts everyone else around you, and it allows you to really like have more stress internally in your body, and you don't go to sleep well rested, right? We all need a good well rested nap or sleep. So yeah, try and just really stop checking emails after work hours, and make it a rule not to talk about work at home. If your husband or your partner or your roommates know that you are not so happy in that work environment, but you can't really do anything about it right now, just let them know that you don't want to talk about how your day was, right? So
time out.
yeah, exactly. So leave your work at work and tune in some tunes and make your way home. And if you actually have a really short trip, just try and go for a walk right before you get into the door, right? Just let it all out. Okay. Second is find an outlet outside of your workplace. So it's so easy to get consumed with all of the drama or the negativity in a toxic workplace. And it's not always easy to let it all go or compartmentalize it at the end of your workday. For me, I work quite well in compartmentalizing things, so I can leave things at the door, and maybe I'll think about it later when I'm sleeping, or I'll wake up in the middle of the night, but I'm usually quite good at compartmentalizing. So maybe try and do that at the end of your day. But if you know you really need to vent your frustrations, which everyone does, I'm going to give you a couple of extra tips under this tip. Is one, just start typing or writing it out in a journal and just getting it out, because the more that we write, the more it releases us, right? And the more that stress or that energy gets taken out of our internal bodies and limits our, I guess, our unhealthiness, right? But if you really need to vent, find someone that you can speak to, that you trust, that you can just share everything. They don't need to respond. They don't need to say anything to make you feel better. They're just simply there to listen. Actually, someone just shared a great link with me, and I'll share that in you, but it's called 7cups.com. And in there, it's a free coaching therapy app or platform that allows you to just speak to anyone. So it's amazing. I just checked it out the other day, and I would highly suggest that's a great avenue to find that outlet outside of the workplace. So those are a couple extra tips, sub-tips under there. Just quickly, because I'm seeing a bunch of you guys signing in, and it's so good to see. Hey, Gunjan. Hey, Laura. Hey, Letitia. Hey, Christabel. Hey, Karen. Hey, Vivek. Just let us know where you guys are signing in from, and if you know of anyone who can get value from this, feel free to share it. Okay, so tip 1 and 2, I know we've got 10, don't worry, I will get through them as fast as I can, and you can always read it on the blog post. But this is a big one, right? So tip 1 and 2 was 1, leave work at work. Tip 2, find an outlet outside of your workspace, okay? These are our sanity tips. Tip 3 is find a positive distraction. Okay, so obviously when we're at work in a bad environment, we lose our mojo and we lose our motivation to start even doing anything else, maybe even giving ourselves some self-love or some self-care, right? But really we need to look at a couple of things. One is surround yourself with positive people, whether that's finding 1 or 2 people in your work environment that actually are full of positive energy, right? There are those people in there. It's not like the entire company are ridden with toxic people, right? The company culture may be ridden with toxicity, but not the people, not all of the people. So try and, whether you're at the water cooler or wherever it is, find those people that exude positivity, right? And find activities outside of work that also can help to lift up your attitude, or maybe do things like yoga or go to meditation, or, certain things that are going to boost your mojo and boost your motivation either at the end of the day or even at the start of the day, right? As well, take advantage of any company perks that you might have, or go to external events, build yourself up more on the professional development side, right? Look at what different opportunities are out there or what types of communities you can connect with, right? And really that will help you to focus on the positive aspects of your career as well as your future prospects. So if you need to stay in this career for whatever reasons it is, whether it's career advancement or you've only just joined in on the company, then really think about, how am I going to stay there for 6 months or a year or whatever that timeline is that you need to be in there for, and still create a positive environment so that the stress doesn't eat you up and get us sick. Okay, 4 is set healthy boundaries. So this kind of connects with number 1. but it's quite challenging. And I know I found it challenging in the past. And not that I've worked in a toxic work environment, but I've definitely worked with people who have been quite toxic sometimes, and I also have found it hard in general for myself to set boundaries. And I've gotten so much better in the last 5 years, but it's something that I really try and protect. And I go through waves, because I think with everything, you're going to have to ebb and flow and things will change, right? But learn to say no, particularly in an Asian context. So for those of you tuning in from the Asian region, right, sometimes it's hard for us to say no. And sometimes we just say yes when we actually mean no, right? So it might seem counterintuitive or even feel wrong, but it'll really help prevent you from burning out, which is a huge topic. And we do have an episode on that, as well as a burnout checker. We'll share that as well. But, we don't want to burn out whilst we're in this environment. It's not something that we should put ourselves through. So think about things like taking your lunch break outside of the office, right? Not going into work early, or staying late, right? Not working on weekends or from your home on your day off, and really try not to respond to clients or bosses at all times of the day as best as you can. So something that I did when I was working in, focused on marketing and PR side of things, is that I had an autoresponder, and some people hated it. I actually had a few people respond to me and say, "Oh, how rude, you expect me to write back?" Right? But I had an auto response for probably 3 years, which said, "Thanks. In order to stay sane and keep, outside of my inbox for the 24 hours that I have, I'm doing this, and I only check my email at certain times." Or I changed it then and said, "If it's really urgent, please re-forward me this email with the title urgent in the subject." And something I like to think is, this works also for those of you that are freelancers or running your own business, if we don't set those boundaries, no one else will. And, you need to be able to set those expectations from people working with you. And by all means, there's going to be times where you're going to need more focus on the work side and not have to be able to have as strict boundaries. Like, we totally understand that, right? But it's just trying to work with what types of boundaries can you set, how deep can those boundaries go, right? Or, and how long can they go? Because it might be, when you're on a tight deadline, it's harder to do. So just bear in mind about your own personal situations, because it doesn't always work 100% for everyone to set these boundaries that we're sharing. Okay, so tip 5 is create a positive workplace for yourself. So something we always love to do is, have vision boards, right? Which you've probably heard us talk about if you've tuned into our TV for a while. But while we can't always control our surroundings in an office environment, you can create your own workspace, and you can create your workspace to fill you with positive energy. So whether that's popping up positive affirmations, or whether or not that's having a digital vision board, or changing your quotes weekly on your screensaver. I used to do that depending on where I was and how I was feeling. And I'd have quotes on my fridge, so that when I woke up in the morning, I would have 3 or 4 quotes that would get me going into the day and really set me on the right foot. But think about, what types of motivational desktop backgrounds can you have? What types of apps can give you some little boosters in the day, right? A little bit of motivation, or a little bit of positivity with a beep on your phone is great. Or listening to music, or just certain things. And make sure your workspace is clean, right? Because if you can have a tidy workspace, our brain can be decluttered and just release and sort of start the day on the right foot. So just
sorry if I jump in and say, I'm sure loads of people who are watching might have some little apps or tools that you're using, or add-ons to your Chrome or whatever. So if you have those and they're working really well for you, then maybe just comment and share them, because I think for us, just being mindful of time, we're sharing so much, but then there's so much more examples that we'd love to share, and we will when we can do so. But for those of you who have suggestions, just share.
Totally.
Sorry.
Great idea. No, totally. Great idea. So try and create that positive oasis. 6 is stay true to you, right? So don't let your external environment change who you are or cause you to sacrifice what matters to you. If it's really not working for you, think about like, can you leave your job, right? But being authentic is essential. And that means finding your voice and speaking up, right? So standing for what you believe in, fighting for the good, right? Fighting for the good fight. So you choose your battles for sure. But if it's worth it for you, then it's definitely about standing up and speaking up, right? Especially like Sol said, when others are playing dirty, then that's not something that anyone should put up with. Any bullying or any of that sort of stuff is immediately something that you should stand the ground for and make sure that you get your voice heard no matter what happens, right? You'll find something better on the other side of that, dirty game person, right? So just remember, you're not defined by your job title or your work tasks, okay? You're defined by your thoughts, your actions, and the virtues that you exude in the most difficult or dire times. That's when our true selves can shine. Okay, 3 more, guys. 7, don't add fuel to the fire. So don't gossip, don't say, oh my God, he says, she says, this person, Chinese whispers, all of these sort of things. And don't fall into negative behaviors when you're surrounded by it, because it's so easy to do, right? Sometimes it feels like it's the easiest thing to do and just get caught up in it. So just don't join them in, right? 8, start plotting your exit strategy. This is our favorite, okay? Because we know that you're not happy. And one of the things is just, if you're not, and we really suggest start plotting your exit strategy, right? Sometimes though, I've got to say, it can also come from our own negativity and our own negative energy. So please just check in with yourself and see whether or not that's coming from yourself or the general company culture, right? Because sometimes we can bring that energy into the workspace as well. But if you need to, think about what's that timeline, what are the sort of runways that you need or the financial plan that you need, right? It's never too early to start planning your exit strategy. And it'll help you to really start thinking of your career in a bigger picture, which we've got a ton more tools to share with you on our TV. So go ahead and tune in over there and have some binge watching. Number 9 is focus on your career development. So if you're really focusing on so much of the negative energy, we're not able to start seeing on how we should craft our future and what that future looks like for us. But if you can, put your attention and your energy on your career development, then think about what's hindering your progress, right? What's hindering your potential future career, and look at where or what types of projects you can do. So many of us have side hustles. So many of us have projects that we do on the side because we're such a holistic, bunch of human beings, right? So we need to have these extra things. But really think about what other things can you do to build your future career. How can you update your CV, right? How can you go to other networking events or different opportunities? Think of those things. And 10 is take care of yourself. Self-love and self-care are essential and easily forgotten. So we don't always, that's always last on the list. Actually, this probably should have been tip 1, right? But it is in our 10 tips of staying sane. All right, so Sol, over to you.
Okay, awesome. So those were 10 fantastic tips on how you can stay sane in a toxic environment. And of course, everything I think Grace has shared is very you oriented, right? So things you can do to kind of deal with yourself, advance yourself, find coping mechanisms, and focus more inward. So the 5 tips I want to share before we wrap up is around how you can get proactive, because we always end every episode with tips for action. I love it. Grace, I think, called us action queens last week. I am going to embrace that. But yes, so I want to share 5 really simple ways that you can get proactive and be part of the solution. So, not only is it about working on yourself and looking inward, but there's also things you can do inside your organization rather than just kind of point and shake your head and be like, ew, toxic. How can you make it less toxic and contribute to a real solution? So one easy peasy one is be communicative. So I think, like I mentioned earlier, whether you're talking in terms of the company system or just talking around how people interact in an organization, communication is so key in any kind of relationship. So if there's misunderstandings, if problems come up, and they always do, it's only natural in a work setting, just don't let things fester, right? Don't kind of walk away angry and then go gossip to somebody, or like hold this frustration in you and then you're not happy and then that just goes on and on. You know, like actually to be professional and to be constructive, it is about addressing situations. If not immediately because you're afraid like you have anger issues and you might blow up, then sleep on it. But, you know, don't just let it, you know, subside if it's something that's going to impact you in a deeper way or impact the working relationship you have. So, you know, in our blog post, we'll include this link as well, but I recently listened to this great interview by Tim Ferriss with Arianna Huffington. And I love something she shared about a policy that she has in her own company. So her number one, I guess, peeve is, you know, people who badmouth their colleagues or talk about their coworkers negatively behind their back. And something she said, and you have to give it a listen because she's just so firm and it's quite powerful, right? Is like, she's even told people on first-time interviews, like, you can walk into my office, you can yell and scream, you can tell me that you're not happy with something I said or a decision I made, but say it to me in a professional way, and I expect that for all interactions with your coworkers as well. She's willing to let go of people for bad mouthing and, you know, trying to solve things indirectly. And I think that is awesome. And you should really listen to the interview anyway, because the conversation that comes out of that around how millennials respond to that policy is really quite interesting. So that's number one, be communicative. Number two is, you know, and it's hard, you know, all these tips aren't always things that apply to everybody. You really have to gauge what works for you, what works for your company, etc. But where appropriate, you know, number two is to seek help from your boss or your HR person or your direct manager, someone, you know, you trust and someone who you believe has the ear for it. So be a bit smart and strategic with this one. But, you know, something my mom always used to tell me growing up is that, you know, wisdom is knowing when to do what and how. And so I think that's really the key to this tip is, you know, knowing when is the right time, who is the right person, and what is the right way to express your discontent. And when you do, I would say, again, going back to point number one, it's not about going and, you know, dwelling on the problem, thinking of whose fault it is. It's going in with a view to find a solution. And what you're asking or seeking is maybe some support, some advice, some tips in what would be the best approach. Because at the end of the day, if there's a problem, it takes two to tango. So Grace has already shared some ways to look inward and think about your role in the dynamic, but then it's okay to ask for help from people inside your organization to express what's not working and genuinely ask for tips or strategies to make it better. So as an example, when I was working in the agency, in a PR agency for a while, I was actually really, really grateful when I wasn't that professional about it at the time because I was burning out, but I went in and I was like, I am so overworked and I don't know what I'm doing wrong. And he really quickly just drew out this like priority matrix for me. And he's like, this is how you prioritize work. This is how you decide what's urgent, what you focus on, what you don't focus on. And, you know, within that 10-15 minute conversation, I came out lighter, more equipped with something I could use. And it also gave me like, I just had less pressure. I'm like, okay, my boss just helped me. It wasn't about, you know, complaining about my manager giving me too much work or saying the system sucks and I shouldn't have this much on my plate. It was going in, asking for help and getting the help I needed because I had, you know, at that time a really good boss. So that's something you can do. Tip number three is take initiative. So in a similar vein, you can also try to take initiatives that may help to address toxicity in your workplace. Toxicity, it's like a mouth twister or something. Anyway, so chances are, if you're feeling that toxic waste all around you, if not all your coworkers, some are probably feeling it too, and they might just be more soft-spoken, or they might just be suffering in silence. So, you know, you can be bold and organize a team lunch, propose a regular meetup after work, create an opportunity for like internal meetings once a week that can be really short, but aimed at actually building real friendships or connections, right, within the teams, or discussing challenges, or sharing best practices, or even buddying up and going, okay, let's help each other when the other person is like dying or under their desk under a pile of work, pull them out, right? So depending again on your team, on your organization, on a variety of factors, think about what ways you could take initiative, small little things that you could do to try and address whatever toxic sources you're seeing. And then as an extension of that, tip number 4 is, you could also propose a team building day, or propose an activity, an outing, or even, bring in someone for a workshop. So again, you have to gauge how appropriate it is, who's the right person, who's the decision maker to speak to about it. But if you're really committed, then make it like a no-brainer for the person who has to say yes. Do a little research, find partners who could help, get a quote, maybe put together a really simple email or like a one-pager proposal that outlines all the stuff your boss or decision maker is going to ask, and make it super simple for them. And if you can even have the support of allies in your team or other voices of people saying, yeah, I'd love to do this, then that only makes the case stronger. And then you get brownie points as well for taking the lead and doing something like that. And so, to wrap it all up, the 5th and final tip is to lead by example. So, I know it sounds kind of tacky, but it's really true. Like, you have to be the change that you want to see, even in a workplace. So don't just think about it. Certainly don't complain about it or just talk about it. Just do something about it, whether it's working on you or working on something outside of you. It's really about exemplifying those values and virtues that you might be harping on about, or that you believe in your heart are really, really important for a positive and inclusive work environment. So it's even just like making an effort to speak more kindly to your coworkers, right? Or saying thank you to your team members, or, giving more constructive feedback to someone who needs it, or just going above and beyond your work scope every so often. The most effective way to create change is to just demonstrate it through everything that you do and say. So just that golden rule that we all know, right, is do unto others as you would have them do unto you. That's it, my 5 tips.
Awesome. Okay, so we've covered so much today. Like, I know there was a lot, but don't worry, we've got you covered like we do most episodes. So today's download, if you haven't seen on the top of our Facebook post, is career sanity tip sheets. So you'll be able to remember everything that we just shared with you, and you can keep that in your back pocket, keep it in your journal, take a screenshot, and just remember all the things that you need to do. But it's at bit.ly Changeable TV 19 download. I know it's always a mouthful, but we are doing our best to shorten it as much as possible. Capital C, capital S, TV, capital D, but everything is upstairs here on our Facebook post. So we've learned how to do that now. But if you guys have anything you want to share with us, like any of the acts like Sol said, or anything even that you've gone through and ways that you've overcome toxicity.
It's a twister, I'm telling you.
Toxicity in your work environment. We should probably learn how to say that first.
Yeah.
But yes, if you do have anything, share it in the comments. But that's kind of it for tonight, guys. We hope that, our Monday Mojo booster or Motivation Monday Changeable TV has helped you to settle into the rest of the week, to get your mojo and your motivation going. And it's so good to see so many of you guys tuning in. We feel that this is such a better time for everyone. So thanks so much for all of you watching. Hey, Adele. And we will see you guys next week,
Monday,
8:30 p.m. And if you want anything, check the comments down below. All right, guys. Have a good night.
bye.
Bye.